Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, we're talking about Nintendo, or rather people posing as Nintendo. Now we've talked about this one a while back, and most recently we talked about this one yesterday in regards to Citra on the Switch emulator, and how it appeared that fans of Nintendo and people against emulation were trying to take the emulator down. Well, there's a brand new article on The Verge that I do recommend checking out, and like everything we talk about, link is in the description below at the bottom. So the title of the article is "A Fake Nintendo Lawyer is Scaring YouTubers and It's Not Clear YouTube Can Stop Him." And if we take a look at the article, it's about Domtendo, who has about 1.5 million subscribers over on YouTube. Now, Domtendo is a well-known German YouTuber, and they've got a lot of Nintendo content on here. They've streamed a bunch of different games, and they have used emulators in the past. Domtendo has been on YouTube for a long time, like 17 years. Anyways, he had some Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom videos that received copyright strikes. And it was very interesting. And then he received an email from Nintendo asking him to take down even more videos. Now, for those who may not be aware, with the YouTube system, you get 3 copyright strikes. After 3, your channel is deleted. So Domtendo had 2 copyright strikes at this point, and then someone pretending to be Nintendo had emailed him asking him to take down more videos or risk a 3rd copyright strike, which would destroy his channel. Now, the person behind these emails, the person posing as a Nintendo lawyer, was named Tatsumi Masaki, or that was their alias. And taking a look here, there was no Tatsumi Masaki working at Nintendo as a lawyer. There was a Masaki Tatsumi, but that was someone who had filed a patent, completely different. Now, I am very familiar with this entire situation as I was in talks with Domtendo back in October about this exact issue. Anyways, here Domtendo and I noticed that there was a Proton Mail account, and I said it was probably fake. I couldn't see Nintendo using a Proton Mail account, even if it was supposed to come from a third-party lawyer. It didn't make any sense. Now, we had a lot of back and forth, and we both did a lot of investigating. I mean, this wasn't just one instance we were worried about. The guy's got 2 copyright strikes on his channel. The 3rd one would eliminate it. So we not only had to determine whether or not this latest one was fake, which was pretty easy to tell on the surface, but what about the other 2? Were they legitimate or were they fakes as well? And I mean, we looked through, we tried to find references of this Tatsumi Masaki anywhere, and again, we were only coming up with a patent. Now, I brought Video Game Esoterica into the discussion because he is well versed with copyright and trademark law and all of that stuff, and he provided some very insightful information to the entire situation. And it turned out here that, yes, you could take a look at it and see that the Proton Mail account was not a Nintendo email and it was fake. But at the same time, YouTube was listening to that person with the Proton Mail account for these copyright claims. It was absolutely bonkers. At the end here, Domtendo was in the right. There was some spoofing going on and everything, but it was just a crazy situation. Now, after all of this was said and done, The Verge here actually contacted YouTube, and I think this paragraph is extremely important. While YouTube spokesperson Jack Mallon did confirm that Tatsumi made false claims, the company wouldn't explain why the company, being YouTube, even briefly accepted false claims from a protonmail.com email address as legitimate, and repeatedly dodged questions about whether Tatsumi made false claims on other creators' videos too. Now, on top of all of that, and this is where things get even crazier, The Verge reached out to this person posing as the Nintendo lawyer, this Tatsumi Masaki. They emailed the Proton Mail account and actually got a response from them. And this is the response. "Dear Sean, I am an authorized agent for Nintendo of America Incorporated." So they are sticking to their story, even though it's false. To me, this entire situation is absolutely bonkers. And I mean, Nintendo themselves responded to Domtendo's request here for more information and to verify that email to see if it was real or fake. If Nintendo didn't step in, Domtendo would probably still be guessing as to whether or not this is real because YouTube was listening to that Proton Mail account. And it goes to show a couple of things here. 1, the whole copyright system on YouTube is completely broken. And number 2, there are possibly other content creators out there without the resources, without the knowledge to go out and ask and try to determine whether or not something is real or fake, and just accept everything as real. Potentially other content creators have been scammed by this system too. And I'm just wondering here why someone would pose as Nintendo. That is a pretty big crime in my books. So let me know your thoughts about this entire situation in the comments below. And on a side note here, I think the whole Retro Game Core Nintendo situation was real. I think this one is different, but I'm also wondering how many channels have been affected by fake takedowns. Next up, we're talking about Nintendo 3DS emulation with Mikage, and I've got a very big update you may be interested in if you're interested in the 3DS emulation scene. I am certain we're going to hear a whole lot more about this one fairly soon. If you head on over to GitHub, it appears there's a new repository here called Mikage Developer Edition. And taking a look at the commit history here, and it appears that things are very active. NeoBrain has just committed something just a couple of days ago. So if you are curious about this one and wanted to learn more about it, again, like everything I talk about, link is in the description below right at the bottom. For those of you saying Mikage is fake, it appears to be very much real. It may not be ready for prime time just yet, but it seems that things are progressing. And speaking about 3DS emulation, and I guess NeoBrain, at least a fork of one of his works, we're talking about Nintendo 3DS emulation on Android with performance-focused Citra MMJ. And Citra MMJ has a recent update that introduces a brand new feature. Now, there were a number of people questioning as to whether or not Citra MMJ was alive and well or just dead and forgotten about, and it appears that it is alive and well. This is the first release since May of this year. So the new feature that was added into Citra MMJ is media projection support. The Absol says this means it can use external displays like Drastic. And thanks the Absol also for pointing this one out because I missed this update. Citra MMJ is 100% free and it's a performance-based fork of Citra. It's designed to try to run games at full speed and may utilize hacks in order to do so instead of emulation accuracy. So the games may look and play slightly different than they would on an actual 3DS. And on a side note here, it's open source-ish. I mean, the developer tries to make this open source, I think. Sometimes they're a little bit better at posting the source code than others. It just seems it's very inconsistent as to whether the full source code is present. Either way here, again, like everything I talk about, if you're interested in learning more about it, a link is in the description below. Next up, we're quickly talking about Sega, and there's a very interesting article over on timeextension.com that I initially thought was clickbait. And you probably will too based on the title. Sega admits it doesn't know how many games it owns, but it does appear to own the rights to Warp's games. Well, interestingly enough, that title is not clickbait. Here is a slide from one of Sega's presentations during SIGGRAPH 2024, a conference. And it says, challenges and future operations. We do not have a comprehensive understanding of all of the Sega-owned games. And how many game titles does Sega own the rights to? Their answer is we don't know. Now at the bottom of that presentation it says all of these are important Sega Group assets and Warp is included in there, which is a very interesting piece of information. Warp may not be the most well-known studio out there, but they're behind games like D, Short Warp, Real Sound, Enemy Zero, and even more. If you wanted to learn more about Warp, you can check out this Giant Bomb article in the description below. Anyways, here just goes to show how big Sega really is, and it's very interesting that they don't know how many IPs they own. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm hoping that Sega figures this one out sooner rather than later, hopefully at some point in 2025. And I am hoping here, maybe on an off chance that Sega discovers they own something they're interested in making a sequel of, or a remaster or a remake of. And speaking about remakes and remasters, next up here we're talking about potential revivals of classic franchises. And in an interview over on Famitsu, PlayStation's boss says it's open to reviving classic franchises. So here's the quote from Sony translated by VGC. The various IPs that we own are an important asset to PlayStation. And as part of our efforts to strengthen our portfolio, we are continually looking at opportunities to leverage past IPs, as well as develop new franchises. So there you have it. Let me know your thoughts about that quote and what Sony might have up their sleeve. Now, I don't want to say that this is a nothing burger, but the quote itself is very generic and very vague. I would say most game companies would be looking at former IPs to see if they can get future success from them. I mean, it would make sense if they've already established stories and characters and, well, a whole lot of details, as opposed to trying to create something new that may not be successful. We'll have to wait and see here, but this to me is something that all game companies should be looking at. Next up here, we're talking about game modding. Now, a few days ago, we talked about this mod here, where someone had modded Dio into Dragon Ball FighterZ. The mod came out of absolutely nowhere with no prior warning and turned out absolutely fantastic. Anyways, here there's another mod for a much more recent game, and that mod is Vegeta into Marvel Rivals. Now, taking a look at this mod, and I don't want to say it's perfect. I mean, it's not perfect. They've just reskinned Iron Man. But at the same time here, it just seems to fit so well. Vegeta as Iron Man is up over on Nexus Mods, and I'll say that this is probably not going to be the last mod of this nature that we're going to see. Marvel Rivals is extremely popular, and I'm very curious to see what other mods start popping up for this game. I mean, they've already modded CJ into the game as Winter Soldier, so we've got CJ in Marvel Rivals before we've got GTA 6. Next up, I'm not sure how many people this news will affect, but it appears that Intel is dropping Studio from their graphics software. So this information comes from Reddit from someone who received a response from Intel. Intel has made the tough decision to retire the Studio page and its feature for now in our graphics software. The reason behind this decision is that the features within the Studio page had very low user usage, and many features within the Studio page are supported by great third-party software today, like OBS, Steam, Windows Game Bar, etc. We may consider bringing back these features in the future if demand is high. Taking a look at the responses for it, and it doesn't appear that it's going to be missed. As much as you might hate them for it, they're not wrong. Almost everyone I know prefers OBS replay buffer. This person says hardly used it anyway, and this person says annoying, but they're right. And this person says, I can't fault them for their decisions because it was bad. So if you planned on using Studio in the future, it appears that you're among the minority and there are some other options available. Next up, we're talking about a very interesting ROM hack for Super Mario 64. Now, I went through my previous videos and didn't see that I've ever covered it, and if I have, let me know. Anyways, here Mr. Don Coyote says, I'm surprised you haven't covered Mario in the Multiverse yet. It's an amazing Super Mario 64 ROM hack. Each world is a different game, SpongeBob, Splatoon, GoldenEye, Doom, and Pokemon, but made as a Super Mario 64 ROM hack. You can buy various power-ups to beat the levels. It's incredibly fun, creative, and well made. So taking a look over on romhacking.com, and it appears that Mario in the Multiverse was uploaded on December 24th. It's got an overwhelmingly positive review score right now at 9.27. There's a trailer of this one up on YouTube, actually a few videos of it, and I would say this one looks super interesting. I mean, taking a look at the elements here, the different worlds, and well, I am definitely interested in this one. Again, if you are curious about this one and wanted to learn more about it, links are in the description below here, and I do recommend checking out this person's YouTube channel as they've got a whole lot of videos about this release, as well as a video on how to set up and play Mario in the Multiverse. And speaking about videos on YouTube, next up here we're talking about a brand new Game Boy Color game. It's called Akumanor Gaiden DX, and if you're a fan of Castlevania, you may be a fan of this. It's a brand new Game Boy Color game over on itch.io, and it's 100% free. So heading over to itch.io, and the game can also be played in the browser. It doesn't require an emulator in order to run. This is super interesting. If you're into Game Boy Color stuff, you may want to check it out. Now, this game is designed for the Game Boy Color, so not only can you play it in the browser and in an emulator, you can also play it on a Game Boy Color. It won't work on a regular Game Boy or something like a Game Boy Pocket, but they do have a regular Game Boy version of it as well. And speaking about devices that will run Game Boy and Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance and, well, so much more. Last up here, we're talking about the Miyoo Flip. And it appears that Miyoo Flip is now available for pre-order, and it's releasing on January 5th. The Miyoo Flip is up for $90 overall. It's a little bit smaller than the Anbernic 35XXSP, and it competes directly against the Anbernic 35XXSP. So in terms of performance, we know what we're getting here. Don't expect PS2, don't expect anything crazy. Just expect stuff like maybe Dreamcast and below. At $90, I would argue that this is the upper limit of what these devices should be going for, but at the same time, with the reputation of the Miyoo Mini, I'm assuming that this device is going to be very good and also very hard to get a hold of. We'll have to wait and see here, but it does seem that pre-orders are full or out. I don't know. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a lot today. Feel free to discuss anything we talked about in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.